Hi, everybody. All right, there we go. Well, I love Dubai. It's wonderful to be here. I've been here for 2 days, almost over the jet lag, feeling good, getting up in the morning, working out. You know, when I come here, I can't help but think of the 1870s in the UK. So people around the world in the 19th century was the British Empire, and the United States was actually viewed as kind of a bit of a rebel backwater. Our debt was worthless. Nobody really wanted to do business with us. We kind of did our own thing. But the British, they ran the world. Very young Junius Morgan went to London, and he worked under George Peabody, and they sold bonds. And his whole thing was trying to sell the debt of the States of America to the British. The British laughed at them. They said, "Why in God's name would we buy your debt? You're just going to default. You guys are a bunch of rebels. Haven't you forgotten what happened a little while ago?" Fast forward 30 years later, the United States became a superpower. We became the financial center of the entire world. We did that because we had humility back then. We were an immigrant country. We welcomed everyone. They came to us. Didn't matter who you were, the Irish, the Italians, Norwegians. Child of immigrants. My grandparents on my dad's side came from Norway. Grandparents on mom's side came from Italy. They were dirt poor. Came to America. Did great things. And from that, we built a great society. Look at 2023, and I'm in an industry, the blockchain industry, which is creating, in just 14 years, nothing to $3 trillion of value. We are the future of finance, the blockchain industry. Every single dimension of what we do is fundamentally redefining intellectual property, commodities, securities, how currencies work, central bank policy. There is no technology that has been this pervasive and useful from everything from national ID to ESG and all the things in between. A humble nation would look at these things and say to itself, how do we get some of that? Instead, in the US, our Treasury Department is suing most of the people in my industry. FinCEN, others, they say, oh yeah, okay, you're fine. The SEC shows up, they give you the right to have an IPO, 2 years later come after you. Smart countries take advantage of the stupidity of falling empires. We did in the 19th century. We saw the British, the arrogance they had, and we said, we can do better. I come here, and what's my experience in the last 2 days? I went to Abu Dhabi and met with the ADGM, soon to meet with Vara. And you know what? They have open arms. They say, we're here to learn and listen. Things can change in weeks if they need to. Our goal is to build something that will last a century. And you are one of the industries that matter, just like AI, property tech, just like all the sustainability solutions, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, these types of things, they matter because they don't create the jobs of today. They create the jobs of the next 3 generations. Just like complex financial markets were the jobs of the future. They just didn't matter so much to an agricultural society or an industrial society in the 1870s. But a few people along the way realized that maybe, just maybe, high finance is going to be a big thing. And it became a big thing for their children and their grandchildren. So I love being here. And I wanted to share what I think makes our industry so special. I wanted to share in the limited time I have what we're doing real time. So this industry is all about exponential technologies. It's about this idea that a small group of people can come together. Like with Ethereum, it was 8 of us, not very big. Cardano, 2 of us, not very big. And create ecosystems that now span over 100 million people in less than 6 years, and at the all-time high, $500 billion of value. Ecosystems that talk at their core about reimagining how governance should work. We all are familiar with corporations and LLCs and all these things. How do those work in these giant global economies when you have subsidiaries in 100 countries and half of them are at war with each other? Look at the US and Russia, for example. How will they ever agree on ESG now? They can't. So it's left to us in the private sector to think of new structures and models. And when we look to the cryptocurrency industry, right here, right now, we're developing completely new ways of thinking about how people organize and decide. Why? Because we tell all of you, we're decentralized. We're decentralized. Well, what does that really mean? It means Windows without Microsoft. It means the iPhone without Apple. It means Android without Google. That's hard. Because who's in charge? How do you get a product backlog? How do you make decisions? Which customers do you prioritize? How do you compete? How does chaos compete with order? Think of these things. These are the questions that our industry, real time, with $1 trillion behind it, has to answer. It's not optional. The roadmap of Ethereum, the roadmap of Bitcoin, the roadmap of Cardano, we have to figure out governance structures to include everybody. We look to the greatest growth in the world. It's Africa. You go to Ethiopia, Kenya, Sub-Sahara, 70% of the population's at or under the age of 30. Those are the young people. By 2050, the 2060s, trillions of dollars of new wealth is going to be created. There's no preferences for Google or Microsoft or big companies or a particular governance structure, a particular corporate governance structure, ways that currency should work. They don't care. They get to decide a completely new way of doing things, just like Japan did in the 1950s, because they had to rebuild everything. And look at where that got them, how quickly they became a superpower again. Well, our industry is growing fastest there. The #1 country for crypto adoption is Nigeria. 200 million people, 30% of the population. And that's just the beginning. And what we're doing real time is we're reimagining how microfinance should work, remittances should work. We're reimagining how all things ought to be done on a transnational basis. We don't need laws. We build structures in the code itself. You go from don't be evil to can't be evil. Let's try to prevent fraud to the system itself prevents fraud. This is an example of just one of many things we think about in our industry. We're the world leader in digital identity. We invented new standards like self-sovereign identity. It's something called the DID, the Decentralized Identifier, standard that came out in 2013 from the W3C. Well, guess what we're doing? All this tech in the crypto space, real time, it's inventing ways to prove things without revealing things. You come to America, you want to get a beer. You have to be at or over the age of 21. Well, how do you show that? You pull out your ID, passport, your driver's license, some government-issued ID. You don't just show your age. You show your address, your name, organ donor. Some states, I think they have the social security number. Not exactly something you want the bartender to know, but you have to do it because that's the only way you can prove it. What if you had a system that would just say yes? Is it pre-tax or post-tax money? Are you a registered and accredited investor or not? Are you a U.S. citizen or not a U.S. citizen? Are you allowed to be here, not allowed to be here? Are you allowed to play in this, or are you not allowed to play in this? These types of things. I'll wait for them to finish. That's called a zero-knowledge proof. Before the cryptocurrency space came around, there was a collection of places like MIT and other places. Write a paper or so every year. It was an academic thing. Our industry has brought billions of dollars of R&D into this industry. We publish hundreds of papers now, write software at a rate you wouldn't believe. We've advanced the state-of-the-art by 25 years in the last 3 years alone. And in the next 5 years or 10 years, you know what's going to happen is that technology is going to work its way into the financial industry. And what's your #1 problem when you're an exchange? What's your #1 problem when you're a bank? What's the thing that keeps you up at night? What's so hard about all the things you do and say and think? Compliance. Every day you run into these things. I have to, just been fined. JP Morgan Chase, $19 billion in fines in the last 20 years. You live it. You suffer from it. You lose customers over it. The wars of the West and East, they come here. And they make you fire your customers. They make you pick sides, and you just want to do business. Well, maybe, just maybe, you could automate all that. Could you imagine if all the regulations were in code? Their libraries, their APIs, you could just call them. To be in full compliance, all you have to do is just call a library, an API, software. Because at the end of the day, your customers live everywhere. Think about these cryptocurrency networks. Ethereum, Bitcoin, Cardano. Hundreds of unique jurisdictions, thousands, if not millions of people every single day coming to applications, using them, a DEX, trading with each other. Some days it's Switzerland, other days it's Singapore, some days it's Abu Dhabi. That's how modern finance works. You don't know where they come from, but you just have to get them to play by rules. And if it's all software, the software will figure it out, not the entrepreneur. And the regulator can update it real time every day. That's an innovation our industry is bringing in this open regulatory standard, open law, code-based law. It's pretty remarkable. So innovations in governance, innovations in identity, innovations in privacy and zero-knowledge technology, innovations in the automation of regulation, just a handful of things. It's pretty cool. What about intellectual property? How many people here know about AI, generative AI, open AI, Claude from Anthropic? You got Google Gemini, not to be left out. Facebook has Llama, all these models, cute little animals. Here's what it translates to. The single most important technology of our lifetime, artificial intelligence, is on track to be controlled by 5 companies. 5 companies. They're all in the United States. Not so good for the rest of the world. Why? Because this is something for everybody, not just a few people. And it's not good to give so much to so few. The problem is, how do you govern something so powerful as AI without having some good custodians behind it? You hear about alignment. You hear about safety. Well, turns out that our industry is the regulation layer for these types of technologies. In the same way you can build the Bitcoin protocol or Ethereum or Cardano, you could build a decentralized large language model. Why? We have mining. Sounds a lot like training, doesn't it? You need data, don't you? Lots and lots and lots of it. That's why Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Facebook are in charge of this. Why? Because they have billions of customers. And for the last 30 years, they've been kind of learning every single thing about them. In fact, I read an article years ago, Google knows you're pregnant before your boyfriend does. It's true. They know everything. And the problem is they don't share that. And if they control the fuel of training, it means they control the models, and they decide who gets to use them. So what if you could democratize data? You can make it everybody's concern. Bring everyone together. This is what the cryptocurrency industry effectively does. Who owns Bitcoin? Who owns all the data on it? No one. And thus everyone. That's the magic of these types of systems. So when you talk about large language models, where do we want to go? Well, wouldn't it be nice that the training, the data, the RLHF, the reinforcement learning with human feedback, all those things, all that's controlled and governed by a decentralized system, and every single person in the world has equal access to it, can use it in their way, how they want it, where they want it, when they want it? I'd like that. That's a better world. You see, that's the core ethos of who we are and what we do and what makes our industry so special. It's not about the big egos and the big companies, the Steve Jobses and the Bill Gateses fighting each other in titanic battles, the iPhone versus the Samsung Galaxy. It's just about freedom. It's about building services and businesses and concepts and ideas and giving it to every single person, the whole world, everybody, each and every person. Why? Because we're all equal at the end of the day. We're all humans. Basic principle. And we deserve better, and we deserve the businesses and services that we desperately need to stay alive and thrive, to be fair. And the problem with the world, the way it works right now, and it's always worked, has been it hasn't been fair. There are winners and losers. And I think we'd like to live in a better world. That's what ESG is all about. SDG is all about. Here in Abu Dhabi, just across the street, they're holding COP28 at the end of the month. And what are they going to be talking about? How do we make the world better for everybody? How do we heal the world? How do we all get along and work with each other? When it's not fair, there can't be peace. We can't love each other. We can't work together. The blockchain industry, our core contribution is allowing us to reimagine and rethink how business ought to work when we get rid of all of these regressive models of monopolies and middlemen and infrastructure that robs us of our dignity. And it doesn't matter the industry. This has been the only time in my life where I've had the unique opportunity to be in a music video with Snoop Dogg and at the same time talk to AI CEOs and everybody in between, because they all have the same problem at the end of the day. There's somebody in the value chain, whether you're a nation state all the way down to an entrepreneur wanting to get some money and you don't happen to live in Silicon Valley. There's somebody in the value chain that acts as a wall or a gatekeeper. And the person who gets through is in spite of the 9,999 other people who didn't get through. We went to Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, all these places, and we saw it firsthand. We saw it firsthand when we went to Vietnam. We saw it firsthand. We went even to Japan. Huge difference between the people born and live in the countryside from the people that live in Tokyo. And that's what our industry is contributing. It's who we are. It's what we do. That's why we grew from nothing to trillions of dollars, and that's why we have durability. You see, because it's, at the end of the day, philosophical. It's a way of life. It's a vision. It's not just technology. It's not just businesses. It's not just services. You can always copy technology. You can always take a photocopy of Mona Lisa. You can take art and replicate it, but you can't be Da Vinci. They're made. And when you think about the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, the winners and losers are not going to be the people with the most brilliant scientists, the people with the best engineers, the people with the best businessmen. It's a global world now. They travel. They move around. South Africa wasn't a very good place to run businesses in, so they lost Elon Musk. He came to America, and now he runs our space program. It's the people who have the humility to admit that they need to create a place for the best to live, which is why I'm very bullish about this region. When we look to Dubai, when we look to Abu Dhabi, when we look to the Emirates, and all across MENA, I see people who dream big dreams. I see people that want to solve problems. I see people who don't give up and they have an indomitable spirit. It means the world to me because we've lost that in the United States, just like the British did in the 19th century. When I look to my own streets, I see people that are so pessimistic and they say to themselves, we can't, and they give 1,000 excuses. To give you an example, we built the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco under budget and ahead of schedule. It cost more money to build the suicide nets under the Golden Gate Bridge than the bridge cost. And it took an extra 2 years to build them. That's where we're at. That doesn't happen here. So the future belongs to the bold. The future belongs to the humble. And our industry is all about rewarding that. Because at the end of the day, we've equalized all the things that keep us so distant and apart from each other. The technology, the idea flow, the financial markets, the financing, and ultimately our identity and property. So thank you all for being part of this movement. Thank you all for building in this movement. Each and every one of you has your own project, your own idea, your own thing at different stages, and your own concerns. Just talking to people outside, some were in construction. Some people are building a quantum-proof blockchain out of India. And there's everything in between. That's just here, a little hotel in Dubai. And just like this, there's rooms in Singapore, there's rooms in India, there's rooms in Europe, in the United States, South America, and they're doing exactly the same thing. And any single time you do something, your success becomes a global success. It contributes to our industry. That's the final point and the value of it. You're not building alone anymore. Every brick that's forged is in a same wall that we all get to use. So thank you for making my life a little easier, and I hope I can find ways to make your life a little easier. And thanks for being part of the revolution. Cheers.